it's better to just like work harder during the week and then clear the weekend to refresh. And I feel like that's very productive, gets people like, fresh on Monday, instead of being like, when you work on the weekend on Monday, you're like,
no,
if you like, you don't want to work, or you're just like slow or something.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started, shall we? To those of you that are just dropping in today, here's what we're going to be talking about. It's an Ask Me Anything day, and it is Friday. Tim and I and Marcel, we agreed that we should keep our bantering and chit-chatting to a minimum, so that when people show up at the time, we can kind of dive into it and make the most of the time. So Ethan, can you just give us a double check and make sure that everyone is sounding and looking good, so that we know we're safe to proceed? We are recording, so that's good. I didn't forget that. Tim, we got a bunch of questions over this past week that we were never able to answer that I've downloaded. I've got a few of those in our RevThink Slack channel that I can pull up, because I do want to answer a few of those. Was there any one of them that stood out that you have been thinking about?
I can generalize to what I think that stands out to me most, and maybe this is a good question for the two of you. So maybe an easy way to start this off is I'll ask the two of you questions, and you have to put that out, and then we'll just pass questions around to one another. And if anyone out there wants to ask a question, they can just raise their hand, and we can loop them in. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. And of course, feel free to drop a question in the chat as well. But yeah, let's throw me and Marcel into the hot seat. Let's see what you've got.
Yeah, and this might be a little bit of a throwback, but the easy question, keep it easy, the easy volley for you guys today. But like, how do you keep yourself and your team having positive attitudes as the days go on? And how do you keep that influencing, or let's say, like, how do you keep that and the creative effort moving forward on each project? So it sounds like what attitudes can you do to infect the attitude from a distance, and then what kind of oversights do you have on projects? Let's keep it in the creative sector, not kind of like financial oversights. Who wants to take the first one there?
Yeah, clearly the answer to the question is Marcel puts on those glasses. That's how he answers. That's how he solves that problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to read the question actually. I can go. It's so here's I'll go back to the conversation that I was having with PJ the other day about to keep the momentum. So it's not letting people settle, so whenever I see that there's an artist that it's going to be like, slow for maybe a day or so, I try to come up with ideas for that person. So I try to keep the momentum going. So you're never jump on a call and you're like, hey, yeah, well, we don't have anything. No, there's always something to do. There's always something else that you can do. Maybe marketing efforts, or maybe like there's a project that we were doing. We had like 2 down days, and it was supposed to be though two down days. But I have a list of things that I want to do for state. And then I called my art director and say, hey, I know you're going to be waiting for an answer on this, and probably the client will get back to us tomorrow at the end of the day. Do you want to do these things for us? And she's like, on it. So it keeps the momentum going, so everyone never feels like, there's like a slow moment. It's up to the leadership to actually just, bring your team and come up with tasks. Because even like, for example, this art director would be waiting for maybe like 48 hours. And I'm like, no, I gave her a task that it can take like maybe her like 2 weeks to do, so whenever she has a down day, she's already busy with something else. So that's why I'm trying to like keep people motivated.
I like that. And really the thought of pre-building that, taking the time up front, maybe in the day or in the week, and building that to-do list so you can keep your team moving forward. That's a good practical way to get through that time. Joel, any thoughts there on motivations to keep a positive attitude, or do you have another question that would be a good follow-through?
Well, I just want to echo this thing you talked about earlier in the week, the Stockdale paradox, because it literally just came up yesterday. That there's somebody very important in my life who is running a business, and she's starting to panic. And we were looking at the cash flow in her business, and there was this sense of dread. And I immediately went back to that principle, which reads something like this: you have to have faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time, confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. And so that dichotomy is hard to, I think, accept or hard to process. But more important than anything, what I know is, as creative entrepreneurs, for most of our lives, this is the same thing we've always done. It may be at a scale we're not used to, it may be at a pace that we're not used to, but honestly, this is what each and every one of you and I, what we do on a daily basis. So in a way, we've all been here before. We've done this before. We just have to step up and do it again and know that we're going to prevail. Whatever the obstacle is, we're going to figure it out. But I'm also not pretending that the job in front of us, the current reality, is harsh. So that's one thing. And then I would just add the routines, keeping simple routines like getting up and taking your shower, getting your coffee, putting on a nice shirt, whatever the thing might be, that those simple rituals and creating new rituals to replace the old ones we lost before social distancing, I think those have been really helpful to me and my teammates.
Yeah, I agree with those. Good job. It seems like you've been paying attention all week to the advice we've been giving others.
I'm trying. I was really curious because Brent Quinones, he dropped a comment in here about advice for encouraging team members. Brent, I was curious, do you want to raise your hand and give us some more, illuminate the thought that you're having, or maybe the specific challenge you're up against? Let's see, there he is. Let's raise his hand, allow to talk. All right, you're live with us. Can you hear us?
Hey, Brent.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there, Brent.
Okay, great. So like one of the biggest issues we've had now, and it's getting a little bit better, but some of our team members now, like me, are homeschooling their kids in addition to working. And let's say some of them aren't necessarily built for that. And they're feeling overwhelmed with just the amount of schoolwork in addition to their responsibilities with our work. Now, we've been flexible in letting people cut back on hours or time and, just working when they can. But do you have any suggestions that we could pass along to them outside of like the standard routine, but just to keep them motivated to get done what they need to get done?
Yeah, sure. So Brent, we've been homeschooled our 5 boys since the beginning. Our oldest went to preschool, but the minute we had to put anyone to school, we recognized homeschooling was going to be the best source for us. And I'll tell you that the way the whole United States has had to jump into this home environment is different than when you do it proactively or making that choice. But I could say over all the years, one of the things that we have learned is structure and flexibility. And those seem to contradict each other. But I'll say it like this, like kids have a natural desire to learn and they have that natural desire to please. So working with your child, seeing what their desire is and letting them be self-motivated into that learning curve is part of the momentum you get to work with. It takes a little bit of listening, a little bit of understanding, and kind of recognizing what their needs are. And honestly, it doesn't matter if it's happening at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. If the child wants to learn something, you don't slow them down to do it. But you also need some structure to it so that your child has expectations of what you want to get done before lunch, and then they can go do something to play. And not allowing like the easy stuff to happen in the morning and push the harder stuff later. But I would imagine really telling my team, hey, I'm going to get online at 10 a.m. I'm going to spend the first hour or 2 in the morning with my kids, 8 to 9, getting ourselves ready, getting them ready for the day. And then the first hour with them, reading a story to them, reading their homework with them, getting them engaged in overall family culture. And then at 10.
Oh, did we lose Tim?
Little kids, it means more playtime, a little bit more hands-on learning. Older kids, it can be structured in longer form. But don't be afraid to set that up. What I know is also like we're willing to fall into patterns in a way those patterns can be programmed into your days, into your weeks. So be as proactive as possible, create some structure around those patterns, use their intuitive nature to begin with, and see if that helps. And then with your team, you're gonna have to communicate similar ways. Hey, I know your day is crazy. I know you need some flexibility. What I need is this done by 3 p.m. Can you just do what it takes to be done by 3 p.m.? And then you as a business owner have to call them at 2:50, at 2 o'clock. How's it going? Are we there? At 2:50, are you almost finished? And then at 3 o'clock, maybe make the phone call, get on Slack, and just make sure it's done. So there's this principle I have of make promises you can keep, or let your yes be yes and your no be no. It really is of when you ask for something specific and hitting a deadline, you mean it, you follow through with that intention, and people will start following into that pattern.
So I know there was a question that I had fielded earlier this week, but I don't think we got to talk about it. And that was this question of, during a time like this, often we get things like government programs, or we get handouts, or people talk about this new stimulus package that just got passed. And people are wondering, oh, can the government perhaps bail me out? Can the government give me a check? Can they give me a loan? And Tim, I just thought it would be good to maybe hear from you and Marcel on that question of, is this actually a good time to borrow money? Because we said something kind of big, I think this was 2 days ago, when maybe you said it, Tim, or I said it, that you don't use debt generally, or loans, to cover operational costs. You don't pay for operations like payroll with debt. And I noticed that Noah Posnick, he had asked us, hey, if you shouldn't use that for operational costs, what do you use loans, or why do you take on debt? So I'm gonna put that to you first, Marcel, and then Tim, let's see what your thoughts are after Marcel chimes in.
Yeah, well, I love Tim's answer about loans. That loans should never finance your operations and your operation cost. And that was like a relief. Just the echoing that from you, Tim. It was such like a straight to the point answer, and it makes total sense. I'm still trying to understand, as far as like the bill, how it goes. I'm still trying to understand. I got a few emails yesterday. I'm going to share it with you, Tim, so you can take a look. It's my personal financial advisor that he was talking about the bill and how that can, be beneficial to a business like mine. I am the kind of, but that's just the way I operate. I'm the kind of guy that I use benefits if I really need it, If I don't need it, I don't touch it, because I feel like other people will need it, and it's better for just, let other people use if I don't need it right now. So, but that's just the way I think about, benefits and like how these resources are available. I don't want to just apply for that if I'm still bringing in work, as we are trying to now. It's like, I feel like other people might be struggling more than I do. So I'll leave that resource available for them immediately, because I feel like, even like in the near future, that would be some other options for me if I need that benefit. But
Yeah.
I want to send it to you, Tim, because I didn't have a chance to read the bill like exactly. I got a few emails here, but I wanted to get your input. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at how that's going to benefit like businesses like ours.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at it. I know there's a lot of analysis going on out there and speculation of what people expect from this stimulus plan and what the bailouts are going to be. I'll just kind of give you some basic principles that I have in place. I reserve the right to change it because there are always some alternatives to each person's situation. But going with Joel's original point, using debt to finance operations, you really are just burning that money. For me, like I kind of think of your business as an investment. And if you were to apply money into that investment, you're looking for a return. Often covering operations is just staying even. So you're literally just burning cash to keep something going. If you don't know the other side of that, if you don't know what your return is going to be, or the far end of what that decision is going to be, you're taking a lot of risk, and you honestly might be just wasting that money. So I want people to know, when you apply cash, or when you apply money into a situation, how do you understand how that money is going to change the performance of the organization, performance of the people, and to get better results than if you had to make other decisions? That's that first principle that's in place. The other one is the stimulus package. And some of what I'm concerned about is really, honestly, people are running out of money in 4 weeks and 6 weeks. Where's the money going to come from then? So I can't really tell if the government's asking us to actually cash flow them, so debt finance the government for a while, and they're going to give us the money back in the form of a refund, an exchange, or credit. If it's in the exchange of a credit, that's going to be applied, I don't know, in July when we file this taxes or the following year. There's some missing gaps of how long I can really sustain my business. And some of what I read is that they want us to actually keep the employees going. And in doing so, they'll give us some credit or forgivable loans. But in reality, like that's again, like you're basically saying, okay, I believe in the government, and I'm going to spend my money now with their ability to bail me out. And you have to have a certain amount of trust or knowledge of how that's going to happen before you start making those commitments. The overall benefit might not be there for you, especially if it's going to create some long-term obligation. Even a 0% interest loan requires payback. And that's going to have to come from future margin within your business. And do we really know what our margin is going to be on the other side of this? If we're talking about doing projects at cost, there is no margin to pay back that loan. So there's a lot of question marks I'd have before I would start really making a specific decisions. But what I love right now is everyone's educating themselves. They're asking the right questions. They're kind of learning what the process is going to be. And my recommendation is just take what you've learned, start doing some calculations or work with someone to do calculations and determine the best plan for each one of you as you're making these decisions.
Yeah, I would chime in too, Tim, because I remember very well, there's this little term that has such massive implications called personal guarantee. And that little phrase shows up on leases when you rent a building. It shows up on lines of credit. It shows up on various types of obligations, debts, and so forth. And
yeah.
there's two types of personal guarantee. You can get stuck with a personal guarantee, and that's bad because you have to, of course, pay it off no matter what. But there's also a personal guarantee sometimes that says you can't even declare bankruptcy and this be forgiven. So you're obligated to pay this no matter what until the day you die. So that's not to scare anyone. It's just to hopefully inform you. In general, I think the principle is this: taking on debt that's collateralized is generally much more acceptable than just taking on pure debt with an obligation to pay in the future. So like when you have a line of credit, the reason that I don't object to a line of credit when you have receivables that are paying 60, 90, 120 days out is you're essentially just borrowing from the future called the check's going to come in and then I'll repay this line of credit. It's just going to get me through this cash flow crunch. But that essentially that line of credit is collateralized with those receivables. But if you're just borrowing money and paying operations, like you said, Tim, you're just burning the money and hoping that there's this thing someday out there called future work. But guess what? The work costs money. When you take on the job, it's an obligation. You have to spend at least half of the money to get the job done. And then you have to pay off the debt that you took on in order to fund operations. So it can be very beguiling, I think, to look at debt or a loan as, oh, this will get me through this. But in reality, it can compound a problem even more so. So it's just something to be.
Joel, and I'll say this: if you don't have the margin now to build up the cash reserve over the last year, most likely you don't have the margin then available to pay back that debt. So that same margin that should already be at play, protecting your asset, if it's not there, it's not going to be recovered in a debt format. So use that as a rule of thumb.
Yep. So Joe had a comment here. He said, I'm curious with these forgivable loans for companies that retain employees, is it possible that a company might qualify for forgivable loans if they create opportunities or bring someone on? And I don't know. I haven't read the legislation to look at the fine print, but these are the questions I think we're all going to be asking. So, I mean, Tim, you, Marcel, as we all hear these bits and pieces of information, there's definitely a thread going on in the 7 Ingredients Slack channel under finance. So feel free to chime in there.
Yep. Me too. I think some of the details, I don't know all the details yet either, but I am thinking the same way Joe is. It is a stimulus plan, so they should be rewarding people that are generating work or retaining people in work. But I would be curious how far that trickles down to some of the business owners that we know. I know this, they're not going to recover your business if it totally fails. So they're not going to try to get you back up and back alive. So whatever you can do now to sustain your business will give you that opportunity in the future to take advantage of this. If you're not sustainable, all of this falls away.
Yeah. So, you know what?
Yeah. I just want to say something here, that, you know, all the loans and everything, I feel like there's a lot to learn about it, but I'm going to share my point of view, and I'll go back to the cash flow. Okay. So cash flow is giving you an information of like actions that you can take now to prevent the need of like the loans. For companies that have a little bit more cash flow, take a look at your cash flow and see what kind of marketing efforts or what kind of ideas that you can bring to the table so you can avoid, you know, that kind of like situation in the future. So to me, it's like, instead of, I'm going to take a look at the loans, and Tim, I just forwarded you the email I got from a financial advisor that I work with on a personal side. But I'm looking at the cash flow as like my Bible now. I'm like, okay, here's the cash flow. What kind of marketing efforts, what kind of reach out, what kind of intensity that I need to work now, so in 12, 16, or 20 weeks, I don't have this sort of problems. You know, so I feel like I'm trying to avoid that situation as much as I can. But now, looking at the cash flow, I have the buffer, the time and the buffer to work on towards that, you know. So of course, there's so many different factors that it's gonna, you know, impact those decisions. But at least I have a clear view and work on things that I have control with. So for example, marketing efforts, I have control over marketing efforts. If I'm like, you know, hitting the marketing all the time, and I have control on like reaching out to my closest clients and work with them on ideas or like new projects and stuff. So really, to me, at this point, is looking at your cash flow and find that answer, you know, and then you can start like educating yourself and say, okay, my cash flow is not so beautiful now. So what kind of actions that I can do? Do I have time to do marketing? Do I have time to do different actions here and there, you know?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, Marcel, I think we've been doing cash flow calls all week, and you said very well, the decision points you can see over a timeline are really the decision points we want you to be able to make. And to work with a spreadsheet like what we've built and put out there is a very easy way to move things around, kind of sandbox those decisions. And I do have one available. I've been posting this in the 7 ingredients group. And I've actually just made a form to kind of move this cash flow out into the bigger universe that anyone can share. So I'll make sure that anyone that needs to get their hands on a worksheet to play with, it's available in 7 ingredients Slack channel.
Very cool. Yeah, Tim, we've got a couple questions coming in. So one, Brent, I see your hand is up. We'll get to you in just a second. There's also a question from Richard. But someone also privately messaged me, and I thought this is kind of a big one, because this one sort of hits you in the heart. It's the question of which employees should we lay off first, right? Like maybe I have an expensive CD, or maybe I have an expensive but lower rank editor, but I make more money off the editor, so to speak, than I do my big shot CD. But I don't know how to decide. Like, how should I think about a question like that?
You want me to start this, Marcel, and see if you agree with me?
Yeah, I have some ideas.
This is, you know, Joel, this is kind of the question that's been passed around a little bit in the last 24 hours for me. And I wrote something up this morning to address to something similar to this. But here's the thing, like, you're the business owner and you're an entrepreneur. You have a reason why you started the business. So I'm gonna call that your core value or your vision. That vision has a purpose. It has a purpose for yourself, you know, like your personal income, your personal family, your long-term objectives. It has something for your career, how you evolve and to mature within the stages of your career to kind of gain influence along the way. And then it has opportunity in the moment for your clients and for your employees. All those pieces come together in what I call like a vision, your investment vision of what decisions to make sure there are investments to move your vehicle moving forward, moving your company moving forward. In this time of uncertainty, what happened is all of that seems to have shifted on us, right? We wonder if there's a future. Can I afford my employees? Is there long-term gain when my clients call me? Do I have a life? Can I keep my family? Should I pay my mortgage? All of that seems to show up all in one moment, and we think our vision had disappeared. We think that the government and the COVID virus can take away our vision, and it's just not true. For certain why you're here, what you're about, and what you're going to do regardless of what's going on. You have a purpose, you have a meaning, you have time. Let's start with that idea. And I know that's a big, heavy thought to answer this question, but when you have that vision that's clear, then I think the next stage of, well, who should come along with me? Is it worth paying a more expensive creative director that I definitely need in order to fulfill that vision? And what I understand is going to be a future environment, or the opportunity is going to be there. Is that my best investment moving forward to take advantage of the new terrain? Or is that an unnecessary luxury? Because you might be an executive creative director and look at a CD as a role, you can actually fulfill that role for a while. And an editor is a member of your team that helps you get those projects done. If you start at that core, it's going to be the beginning of building that plan of what you should prioritize one over the other. And then the question really is like, what is the timeline? You'll notice if you build out a cash flow that an editor, or an employee that's around $60,000 or $70,000 a year, and an employee between $100,000 and $120,000 a year on a month-by-month basis really isn't that big of a gap. It's a large gap over a 12-year period, but on a month-by-month basis, it's not that big of a gap. And the ability to bring in work and keep producing work to fulfill that gap isn't that great of a decision that you would win one over the other in any of those categories. So it's really like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And who's going to be on that team with you as you move forward? That's where I would start making those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I wrote here. And I go back to what I was saying, seeing that information on your cash flow and in your plan and in the values of your company. You have to create like a plan of action, so that plan of action, it's going to give you the information about like, okay, I should keep these people. And also, like, I feel like being a business owner, it's also like we have to take risks, and of course they need to be calculated and based on like a really good plan. And I feel like you guys can help a lot. Most of these people that they don't work with you, I would suggest try to get someone with you like Tim and Joel, someone that can understand the business and help you to create that plan of action, because then you're going to find those answers. You'll be like, okay, for the next year, I'm just going to go into like a survival mode, so then probably your editor will be more important. Or no, I'll keep my plan because I'm foreseeing my clients coming back with projects. And then having a creative director, for example, in my case, it allows me to stay away from on the day-to-day, but it allows me to work on the bigger picture, maybe like a little bit, in the future, saying like, okay, I'm going to be working now on the marketing strategy instead of like running the day-to-day project. I can stretch myself a little longer. So it all depends on the plan of action you have, like what you believe for your company to make those decisions. Yeah. But I would suggest someone to work with you on that plan.
I like that. And if anyone needs help with that, feel free to book one of those half-hour calls with us. We'll do it. Is Richard Frank still online? If he is, he can raise his hand. He has a good question out there, Joel, I think would be good for you to answer.
Let's see. Richard, are you still with us? You want to jump in? If so, hit click on the raise your hand.
Oh, there he is. You just raised his hand, Joel.
All right, let's do it. Let's do allow to talk. All right, Richard, can you hear us?
Hey, Richard. You might have to unmute your microphone.
Sounds like yet another person watching from home.
Richard, are you there?
It seems like it's muted.
All right. How about I ask the question, and Richard, if we get you started, maybe you can make sure we follow up with there. So Joel, Richard asked this question. Video promos, print, radio promotions, social promotions, social media promotions, all these items are what we are constantly delivering and outputting in our industry. Out of those, like, or any medium that you know of, what are the strongest mediums that clients prioritize in the times of needs like this? And what would those needs specifically be?
Well, I mean, the only way you can answer that question is by asking the clients, right? Or do your homework, and it's really your job to understand your clients' needs, even sometimes before they recognize it. So I would just say this. One thing that makes me nervous is anytime someone says, oh no, I need cash, I need to fill my pipeline. Sometimes what happens is they'll take a step down the value pyramid, right? Tim, we talk about this concept of, are you out there selling vision or strategy, or are you just simply selling services, or even worse, are you selling commodities? And sometimes when we get panicky, we immediately think, I just need to go get a project or a job. So I'm going to go out and sell a commodity. I'm going to sell my time. I'm going to sell my hardware. I'm going to rent my equipment. I'm going to sublease my office space. And then what happens, of course, is you start putting this very diffuse message out into the marketplace if that becomes in effect, your firm's positioning. Meaning, we just do it all. Whatever it is you need, we're here to serve you. And you're actually lowering your value proposition in that. So what I would say to you is be careful, because I think it's always fine. It's okay to accept work outside of your positioning, but just don't pursue it, at least publicly. Now, behind closed doors, I think it's totally fine to talk to a client and ask them, what was the list? Hey, video promos or print or radio or social, what are you guys seeing out there? What is really moving the needle for you as things shift? What do you see coming? And just have a conversation with them. And you don't have to have all the answers yourself, but hopefully you have a perspective that can engage them in an intelligent conversation, and you can help guide them and lead them, because you're also an intelligent and smart person who's reading and studying and looking at the changes. But when they say to you, oh, we need radio promotions, but you guys don't do radio, because that's not your thing, right? That's outside your positioning. That's when you have the opportunity to just sort of smile and say, oh, I know, you think of us as those guys that only do this type of work. But between you and me, we've done a ton of radio. We can help you out. You get to make that decision at any time you want, and that's fine. I'm curious to hear from you, Marcel. I'm sure that's happened at times, that people look at your body of work that's out there publicly and they say, oh, the guys at State, they only do that. And then behind closed doors, that client will say to you, you guys don't do live action, right? And you laugh and you say, dude, I got you. We can figure this out.
Yeah, I'm with you. First, I gotta say, just to bring a little bit of reality to this conversation, is clients are trying to find those answers too. They don't know. It's all new for everyone. And again, we're not talking about a specific company or a specific problem. This is everyone trying to understand. I'm sure if I ask some of my clients today, they don't know that answer. I can throw some ideas out there, just to see if they like it. Then they present to their stakeholders, and try to make that a reality. But even them, I feel like it's because things are changing on a day-to-day, speed. So they don't know exactly what's going to happen and in the near future. So I think that brings me a little bit of comfort. I know that clients are confused too. So that brings me okay, it's not just me. Everyone is in the same boat. And the second part is it's important to that happens to me all the time, Joe. People think of State, they only do cell animation. That happens all the time. And then all of a sudden I'm like, let me show you my another portfolio. I'll send you a link. And then I send them a link and they're like, whoa, so you can do all this. I'm like, yeah, it's just not on the website. I don't even know why, because we don't want to show, or, it's not, we didn't have time. I don't know, but this is what we do. So it's always and finding angles too. I usually try to find the angles. So I had a project, I had a call the other day with a client. The project was getting, I wouldn't say canceled, but they're postponing the project till next year. It was a big project, man. I went to San Francisco to talk to them. I put like a crazy pitch together. All of a sudden, on a phone call that she was delivering that, news to me, that she's like, oh, we're pushing this project until next year because we didn't want to do any promotion during this time. Then I came up with an idea. I'm like, what if we do this? And then she's like, whoa, that would probably work. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Give me like a few days. I'll present you another pitch, So it's up to you to like drive that conversation.
And you can try to keep it alive, can't you?
Yeah, I created another problem for her. I'm like, okay, I can do this. How about? She's like, send me that. I'm going to present that option because I feel like that's strong. I'm like, cool. So I just shifted a little bit,
I have another question for you guys. I love the way Melissa is asking this question. She asked it like this: is anyone else worried about their team's energy and creative mindset during this time? And I love the way she asks it because what she's saying is that she's worried about her team's creative energy and mindset this time. And she wants some like collaboration, that we're all in the same boat. So Marcel, I want you to give her some confidence that like, yes.
Right.
We are worried.
That's how this whole thing started, right? Me texting you, hey, are you okay? And then all of a sudden you call me, and then I call him. I'm talking to you guys now, and I'm seeing like a friend of mine asking me like, how's it going, man? And everyone is on the same boat.
Yeah.
It feels like everyone is feeling the same. Clients, us, the government, everyone, So that actually brings, again, a little bit of comfort that it's just not me or not you, Tim. It's everyone.
But Marcel, how are you doing with the creative part of it? Do you have any specific advice to give to someone who wants to make sure their creative team has that creative ability and focus and time set aside to keep the work up to the expectations? Yeah,
well, I'm trying to empower the team a little more, even to give me ideas of like, for example, I don't want to wait too much until we go out to marketing. Again, I feel like I stopped the marketing for maybe like 2 to 3 weeks. And then now I'm like, guys, let's get back on that, So like, for example, an art director say, hey, what do you want to do? All of a sudden she sent me a deck with like 4 different concepts and say, I want to do this. I'm like, go do it. Let's do it. That's what we need. So I'm trying to like make the team part of this whole situation and not separating myself from them. I bring them closer and I say, hey, we all have a problem, so let's work on this together. And all of a sudden, there's like a magic word that I always use. I use the word help. Every time you hear the word help, it's different, right? So if I call you and say, hey, Tim, can you help me? All of a sudden, as a human, your brain starts like, thinking about the situation too. So I'm asking my team to help with the situation. So everyone get together. And it's crazy because all of a sudden they're getting, they're throwing ideas. They're like, working on decks. They're like sending me like new concepts that we can, work together and all of that. So it's crazy to see that whole movement happening. But it's all about like calling them and making them part of the problem with you.
I'd give some practical advice along the same way of, you as a leader could ask people to actually take some time off. I know that some of us have heavy workloads and we're trying to balance it all out, but I kind of feel like those resting days or resting moments are important. So imagine working out a schedule with your team throughout the week and telling people, hey, Tuesday afternoon, you're not going to do any work. And Wednesday afternoon, you don't have anything. And Thursday morning, you're not going to do anything. So everyone has like an extra gap, because working from home is the hardest. It's just that desk is sitting right there. It's in the middle of the room. The computer is calling your name day and night. You have to move the computer out of the way to serve dinner, then you move it right back to it. And I think we have to be realistic in telling people, like, I actually don't want you to do anything on Thursday morning until noon or 1 o'clock. And start allowing people that moment to breathe and to catch up on their Netflix or, go read the bailout plan or whatever that time is, to let their mind have some rest.
Yeah, maybe that's an opportunity for a new routine, right? You create a new ritual called, hey, at this time of the week, everyone, as a team, we all unplug or chill or whatever. I know one of my clients is doing a happy hour with her team at the end of the day today. So they're all going to get on a Zoom and have a drink together. And I thought, that's brilliant. So one more question, is that, do we have time for that? I was gonna mention, by the way, just a funny little note we got from Melissa is actually Artie at Anima Studios. He was commenting to me and saying, this is funny, working from home, I'm on my wife's computer, so it's coming up as her name, ha 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 ha. So Artie, I love the questions in the comments, and I appreciate you impersonating your wife.
Or maybe not.
Yeah, or
maybe. Already we didn't know here.
Well, we are 10 minutes over our allotted 30 minutes. Marcel, did you have something you wanted to, a question you wanted to tackle, or were you just offering yourself to chat for a bit longer?
I was just going to say, like, try to keep yourself in the present, stop reading the news too much on the weekend. Try to, like, find a balance, enjoy the moment with the family a little more, over the weekend, and come back on Monday refreshed, check your cash flow, see what actions that you can do now, and go from there. And be with us on Monday, 12:30 again.
Oh, I love it. That's good advice. I'm going to bust out the grill and get outside. I'm going to enjoy some meal. I'm going to clean up around the house. It's just going to be like some Zen time to get re-energized for the weird week, I'm sure, that all of us. Well, Marcel, thank you so much. Please say your goodbyes and then hand it over to Tim, and then I'll wrap us up.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone. If you're questioning at all, just know that the three of us are firm believers in you and your ability. We thank you for participating with us for this last week, and we look forward to next week and the topics we have ahead.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Please spread the word, and we appreciate that. Also, we're doing these replays on YouTube. If you get a second, go to that YouTube channel and subscribe. That will actually help us out. I won't tell you why. It's just a long story, but do us a favor. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you all back here on Monday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.